mandatory pump breaks in the workplace. The Academy for Pediatrics recommends entirely breastfeeding for up to 6 years, and then breastfeeding in coercion with regular food up to a year. And this has been calculated to reduce 1 million deaths, 1 million infant deaths. So that is roughly 13% of the world's infant death rate, infant mortality rate. Breastfeeding benefits for the mother consist of uterus contractions post-labor, cervical and breast cancer prevention, hypertension prevention, lowered risk for heart disease, as well as prevention for postpartum depression. The Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality also found that infants receive benefits from breastfeeding as well, like the lowered risk for sudden infant death syndrome, lower risk of developing irritable bowel syndrome, diabetes, upper respiratory infections, urinary tract infections, gastrointestinal infections, as well as ear infections, also leukemia and lymphoma. The legislation for Georgia states that states in Code 34-1-6 that the employer is allowed to provide pump breaks regularly for the mother if it doesn't interfere with regular processes during the workday. The Affordable Care Act, implemented by Obama in 2010, was in addition to the Fair Labor Standards Act, and it is a federal law stating that mothers can receive regular pump breaks when needed, as long as the child hasn't reached its first birthday. But at the bottom of this legislation, it states that it cannot supersede the state law governing this aspect. The reason that it is so important that these pump breaks are offered is because it can lead to major health problems for the mother, including engorgement, which leads to metastasis, which causes flu-like symptoms for the mother, can lead to hospitalization, some intense antibiotics, also the loss of the ability to nurse from the affected breast. Also, breastfeeding is supply and demand. So the more you demand for it, the more supply you get. And if you're not pumping enough, then you're going to lose your supply and your baby isn't going to have enough to feed off of. This is very important for exclusively breastfeeding mothers because this is how they get their baby's food source. So the solution is, in my opinion, pretty reasonable. We have to find a happy medium between the pumping mother and the employer. It's not unreasonable to ask the employer to offer the pumping mother 15 minutes of unpaid break to go and pump. And she only has to have this every 4 hours. So if it's an 8-hour shift, then you break it in half. After 4 hours, she gets a pump break, and she doesn't need another one because realistically she can pump before her shift, she can pump after her shift. And if the mother is already given a lunch break, then they shouldn't have need for an additional break when they can do this all at the same time. Also, there are activists already working to solve this through our legislation. Breastfeeding Peaches of Georgia has a petition going around to get enforceable acts for both pumping in work and for indecent exposure, because Georgia still considers breastfeeding as an indecent exposure. We can aid these activists by signing their petition, helping that petition make it to the legislators. Best for Babes supported mom that started this Facebook page, and she actually did a sit-in the Capitol that was where mothers showed up for a nurse-in on the Capitol steps so that legislators knew that there was actually an issue going on with this legislation. So I ask that you help these mothers get a right that they deserve so that they can feed their children. And when this petition comes to a law and this law is ready to be passed, then vote for it. Ta-da. I hope that's good enough.